The infirmary clock never seemed to move when Rachel watched it. That day, the hands showed 4:42 p.m. when she arrived for another visit to her father. It was the 4th time that week. Her eyes were red as always, but she did not shed tears. She had decided to be strong for him. Charles Dawson, her father, was a 68-year-old man who had always been the pillar of the family. A retired engineer, he had spent his life taking care of his health and mind, and was now battling complications from a gallbladder surgery that should have been simple. Rachel remembered the day she brought him to the hospital 3 weeks ago. "It's just routine," the doctor had said in the pre-operative consultation. But nothing had been routine since then. When she entered the infirmary, Rachel greeted the other patients with a gentle smile. She knew some by name, a result of her frequent visits. She knew that the elderly man in the bed next to the window was waiting for his daughter, who would be coming from the countryside over the weekend, and that another lady, occupying the bed near the door, collected crossword puzzle magazines. Her father was awake, looking out the window. His grey hair needed a cut, and his beard, once always well-groomed, was growing unevenly. Even so, when he saw his daughter, his eyes gained a special shine. "My girl," he said in a hoarse voice, "you didn't need to come again today." "Of course I did," Rachel replied, adjusting the pillows behind him. "How are you feeling?" Like an old man who was too much trouble for his daughter. It was always like that. He worried more about the inconvenience he caused than about his own pain. Rachel had inherited this trait, that of putting others first. While arranging her father's belongings on the small bedside table, Rachel noticed she was being watched. Karen, the afternoon shift nurse, was looking at her with an expression she couldn't decipher. She was a middle-aged woman with brown hair and eyes that seemed to hold too many stories. Karen had been working at that public hospital for nearly 15 years. She had started young, full of ideals, believing she could make a difference. The years had moderated her enthusiasm, but not her competence. She had been observing Rachel for days, noting how she was different from most of the relatives. She never complained about the hospital conditions, even when there were no clean sheets. She never demanded special attention, even when she had to wait hours for a doctor. And above all, she never blamed the staff for the complications her father faced, although Karen knew there were reasons to do so. Rachel's devotion to her father reminded Karen of herself years ago, caring for her mother during a cancer that slowly consumed her. That memory, although painful, created an invisible bond between the two women who hardly knew each other. "How is he today?" Rachel asked when Karen approached to check Charles's vital signs. "Stable," Karen replied with a professional smile. "Dr. Martin should come by on the 5 o'clock round." Rachel nodded. Dr. Martin Caldwell was the surgeon in charge of her father's case, a tall and imposing man with perfectly groomed grey hair and expensive framed glasses. He was considered one of the leading authorities in that hospital, with a career full of recognitions and a name that opened doors. His presence in the hallway caused a respectful silence, but also a certain nervousness among the younger staff. As Karen adjusted the IV, her eyes met the chart at the foot of the bed. Something there had been bothering her for days. Small inconsistencies that only someone with her experience could notice. Altered doses, adjusted times, the different handwriting in certain notes. "When will I be able to take him home?" Rachel asked, interrupting the nurse's thoughts. Soon, I hope, Karen replied, avoiding her eyes. Dr. Martin will be able to provide better information. Rachel's father fell asleep after a while. She remained seated in the uncomfortable chair next to the bed, reviewing work documents. As an administrative manager, she managed to negotiate flexible schedules to take care of her father, but that meant taking work everywhere. At 5:05 p.m., Dr. Martin entered the ward. Unlike most times, he was not accompanied by residents or other doctors. He briefly greeted the patients and went straight to Mr. Charles's bed. He examined him quickly, flipped through the medical chart, and then turned to Rachel. Miss Dawson, could you accompany me? I would like to discuss your father's case. Something in his voice made Rachel uneasy. It wasn't the usual authoritative and confident tone. There was a different subtlety to it, almost rehearsed. Of course, Doctor. As she followed the doctor down the corridor, Rachel noticed that Karen was watching the scene with unusual attention. The nurse then did something unexpected. She walked quickly, past them, and as she passed Rachel, discreetly handed her a small folded piece of paper. It's the updated prescription, she murmured to disguise it. Confused, Rachel put the paper in her pocket, continuing to follow the doctor to a small meeting room. Before entering, however, she remembered the note. With the doctor already inside the room adjusting the papers on the table, she took the opportunity to quickly unfold the paper. The message was short and alarming. Do not enter. Leave now. Meet me in the bathroom. Rachel felt a chill. Why would Karen tell her this? What could be so urgent? The doctor was calling her from the door, but a strong intuition made her hesitate. Dr. Martin, forgive me, but I need to go to the bathroom first. I'll be back in a minute. Without waiting for a response, Rachel quickly walked down the hallway. The women's bathroom was at the end of the corridor, far enough not to be seen from the room where the doctor was waiting. Upon entering, she found Karen standing, visibly tense, checking to see if there was anyone else there. What is happening? Rachel asked, confused and alarmed. Why all this mystery? Karen took a deep breath. Her eyes reflected the weight of the decision she had made. Your father is not improving because there was a medication error, she finally said. A serious error that they are trying to cover up. The words fell like stones on Rachel. What do you mean? What error? Karen explained in a low and firm voice. After the surgery, Dr. Martin had prescribed an excessively high dose of medication for Mr. Charles's post-operative treatment. The pharmacy staff attempted to confirm the unusual prescription, but he insisted. When the patient began exhibiting symptoms of intoxication, instead of acknowledging the mistake, the doctor altered the medical records and reorganized the treatment as if the problem were a natural complication. That's why he's been getting worse instead of better, Karen concluded. They're treating the consequences of the mistake, not the actual cause. Rachel felt the blood run cold. Are you sure about this? Karen opened her bag and showed copies of the original notes she had made in the system before they were edited. There was evidence that something had been deliberately altered. I took these screenshots before they changed the electronic record, and I have my own notes. I know I should have spoken up earlier, but... Karen hesitated. I have 2 kids to raise on my own. This job is all I have. Rachel understood the risk Karen was taking. Why are you telling me this now? The nurse looked at Rachel with tired but determined eyes. Because Dr. Martin is going to tell an elaborate story about how your father had a rare and unpredictable reaction to the procedure. He will use technical terms that you won't completely understand. He will say they're doing everything possible, but that these complications happen, and you, lacking medical knowledge to question it, will believe him. Karen paused. I've seen this happen before. Patients suffering from the consequences of mistakes that no one had the courage to own up to. And I saw something in you. In the way you treat your father. How you respect even those who barely notice your presence. Something that reminded me that I still have a choice. You don't deserve this. Your father doesn't either. And this hospital needs to change. Someone needs to say enough, Karen concluded. It was always like this. When something went wrong and he needed to control the narrative, he would call the most upset relative and give them a sugar-coated version, full of technical terms that no one had the courage or preparation to question. Rachel felt the weight of that revelation and also the responsibility. What do I do now? You have the right to the truth, and your father has the right to proper treatment, Karen replied. I'm not suggesting a scandal, but that you seek external help. I know a lawyer who understands medical cases. She can guide you without causing immediate uproar, ensuring your father receives the right care first. Rachel thought about her father, his weak smile when she arrived, and how he always downplayed his pain to avoid worrying her. She wondered how many other patients might be going through the same situation. Thank you, she finally said. I know how hard this must have been for you. Karen smiled slightly. I'll give you the lawyer's contact. In the meantime, go back and tell Dr. Martin you had an emergency and had to leave. Tomorrow, when you return, act normally. We cannot raise any suspicions while your father is still under their care. The two women exchanged contacts and Rachel left the bathroom with a mix of fear and determination. She sent a message to the doctor saying she had a work emergency and would need to reschedule the conversation. Then, instead of returning to the ward, she headed home, where she could think clearly about the next steps. That night, Rachel couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned in bed, thinking about Karen's words, the copies she had handed her, and the trust she had placed in the hospital. The next morning she called the lawyer recommended by Karen. Natalie Brooks, the lawyer, had experience in medical negligence cases. With calm and professionalism, she guided Rachel on how to proceed. First, ensure that her father received the correct treatment, then gather evidence, and only then consider legal measures. The most important thing right now is your father's health, Natalie said. Let's ensure he receives the best possible treatment. With the lawyer's guidance, Rachel returned to the hospital the next day. This time, however, she brought along a doctor friend from another institution, introducing her as a cousin who was visiting. The presence of someone with medical knowledge subtly altered the dynamics of the care being provided. In the weeks that followed, Rachel acted cautiously. She never confronted Dr. Martin directly, but she began asking more specific questions, always noting the answers. Karen, in turn, continued to provide information about Mr. Charles's real condition and changes in his treatment. The internal investigation started discreetly. Natalie managed to secure a meeting with the hospital board, presenting the inconsistencies documented by Karen without revealing her source. The case was not treated as a public scandal, The priority was to correct Mr. Charles's treatment and ensure that other patients would not suffer from similar situations. Gradually, Rachel's father's treatment was adjusted. New doctors were assigned to the case, and finally, after 5 weeks in the hospital, 2 more than originally anticipated, Mr. Charles began to show real signs of improvement. Dr. Martin was removed from his position until everything was evaluated and resolved. Weeks later, other complaints started to surface, encouraged by how the hospital handled the initial case, creating an internal channel for reporting ethical issues. This would not happen again. 2 months after that quiet afternoon, Rachel returned to the hospital. The day was shyly sunny, as if it too was relearning how to warm up after so much darkness. Her father had finally been discharged. Charles walked through the same corridors where weeks earlier he had been wheeled on a stretcher. Now, he walked slowly, supported by his daughter. His eyes had lost some clarity, but not their sparkle. He was unaware of the behind-the-scenes actions, the hidden notes, the silently delivered reports. He only knew that he was alive, and that his daughter had been there every second. Karen was waiting for them at the reception. She didn't say much, she just smiled, with that kind of smile one only learns to give after enduring nights that are far too long. Rachel returned the gesture with a slight nod. There, at that moment, words would have been a waste. Too many had already been spoken. Too many had already hurt. Days later, Rachel returned to the hospital. She was carrying a small package in her hands. She asked to leave it in the staff room. It was a simple cup with some hand-drawn roses and a note with a phrase, "Thank you for everything, Karen. You are very special." Karen found the gift at the end of her shift. She was tired, her back aching, her eyes heavy. As she held the cup, she felt something warm inside, as if that object was telling her, without a word, that everything still made sense. She sat down, alone, in the same chair where she used to drink coffee during breaks. A sigh escaped inadvertently, and a thought came unbidden. The dignity of the world is not upheld by speeches, but by small gestures, a coffee offered on a long night, a complaint made with trembling hands, a care that no one sees. At the reception, the clock read 4:42 p.m., and as in a cycle that closes with delicacy, time went on. Lighter, perhaps, more just. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.